Williamstown, Massachusetts, summer 1987. From all over America, people have come to this New England college town for a very special event. A celebration of the Group Theater, a company that lasted barely a decade during the Great Depression of the 30s, and which has been called the bravest and single most significant experiment in the history of the American theater.
We're here to pay homage to a group of men and women, actors, directors, writers, producers, designers, who are the spiritual parents and mentors of all of us.
That summer in Williamstown, we gathered to pay tribute and to reminisce. There was music.
They used to tell me I was building a dream.
Film.
And so I followed the mob.
Voices from the past.
There'll never be a utopia, but I say we must never stop fighting for one.
And great lines from some of the group's productions.
When you mow down the night with headlights, nobody gets you. You're on top of the world then. Nobody laughs. That's it. Speed.
And some original members of the group were there, too. We all felt a great sense of continuity, how the heritage of the group has been passed on one generation to the next, because many of the original group members have become teachers and directors.
The very word acting has nothing to do with memory. It has to do with what we do.
Lee Strasberg trained people like Robert De Niro, Marilyn Monroe, Al Pacino, and Paul Newman.
When they don't happen, the imagination doesn't work, and the actor is left only with the lines, and with what Stanislavski calls the muscles of the tongue.
The author is
Stella Adler, whose students included Marlon Brando, Warren Beatty, Peter Bogdanovich, James Coburn.
You have to put the life into the words. The author is responsible for the words. He trusts them to you. You must fill them. If not, the author could play the part.
It's like practicing your steps if you're a dancer.
Bobby Lewis taught Meryl Streep, Walter Matthau, Henry Winkler, Faye Dunaway.
So what you have to ask yourself is, what would I do if I were that character in that play by that author? And then you are using your sense of truth to create a character.
Acting is doing.
And Sanford Meisner nurtured names such as Gregory Peck, Tony Randall, Diane Keaton, and Sidney Pollack at the neighborhood playhouse.
Imaginary or emotional? I mean, I've always heard imaginary circumstances.
It's all imaginary. You think Hamlet is real?
I'm Joanne Woodward. I also came here to the Playhouse, and I studied with Sandy Meisner. Sandy was a charter member of that brave experiment known as the Group Theater. He and 27 others heeded the call of 3 young idealists, Cheryl Crawford, Lee Strasberg, and Harold Clurman. Harold Clurman wrote a book about their tumultuous decade and called it The Fervent Years. When I started studying with Sandy, this book was required reading for all of us. It was an inspiration then, and it still is. A technique of the theater had to be founded on life values. The whole bent of the theater, I reiterated time and again, would be to combine a study of theater craft with a creative content. To put it another way, our interest in the life of our times must lead us to the discovery of those methods that would most truly convey this life through the theater. Well, life was exactly what Harold, Lee, and Cheryl found missing from the New York theater of the late 20s. Lots of plays, lots of actors. On the surface, Broadway was doing all right, but most of it was cut from the same cloth. Drawing room comedies, light entertainment, which you'd forgot once the curtain came down. In short, conservative and old-fashioned, and no challenge. Then along came the group, hell-bent on changing the whole face of the American theater. And their passionate experiment gave us the foundation from which we all work. So here's their story. The story of one theatrical endeavor that left an indelible legacy, still strong over half a century later. The story of the group theater. Began in 1931, 2 years after the great stock market crash on Wall Street, when a bunch of highly dedicated, or according to some, crazy young people came together to form a permanent company. Their leaders were three remarkable individuals: Harold Clurman, Cheryl Crawford, and Lee Strasberg. The trio first met working for the Theater Guild in New York. The Guild produced some very good plays, but as Clurman said, they had no blood relationship with the plays they dealt in. They didn't want to say anything through plays, and plays said nothing to them, except that they were amusing in a graceful way, or if they were tragic plays, that they were art. Cheryl was a casting director for them. Lee stage managed and sometimes acted, and Harold was a play reader. A few adventurous theaters, like Eva Le Gallion's Civic Repertory Theater, lingered on from the 20s. Hallie Flanagan's dynamic Federal Theater project and John Houseman and Orson Welles' flamboyant Mercury Theater were part of the changing theater of the 30s. But Lee, Harold, and Cheryl shared visions of a new kind of theater, one that would mount original American plays on Broadway, using a new ensemble approach to acting. And these new plays would mirror and even change the life of their time.
The origin of the group theater in terms of personality had something to do with the fact that Lee Strasberg and I met, and we began to talk about the theater. We found that we shared so many ideas in common, so many common enthusiasms, that began slowly to talk about our theater.
We said we want to start a theater that should represent, be a mirror to America, a mirror of American life, show the face of America, and also stimulate.
And so I had the confidence to spread it about New York among the actors that we were going to form a theater. How, in what manner, and who'd give us money, we didn't think about that. We simply said we have to create enthusiasm.
I'm afraid they convinced me that the kind of theater they wanted was the kind of theater I wanted.
Now, the reason the group grew up was really because the Moscow Art Theater came to New York in the 20s. This was a revelation to everyone in this country. They had never seen acting like this. They'd never seen people who were really real people on stage. Harold Clurman, in the winter of 1930 and 31, began talking to actors on Broadway, saying, you know, it's possible to have a group theater, have people work together, work the way they did in the Moscow Art Theater.
During that time, Harold Clurman began to give lectures, talks rather, not lectures, talks, on Friday nights. And actors from all over town, all over New York City were invited.
I was playing in a play called Gods of the Lightning, and Harold Clurman and Lee Strasberg came backstage, and I was introduced to Lee Strasberg, and he said to me, what were you trying to do? And I didn't know what to make of that, because what I was trying to do was give a damn fine performance, you know. And then he laid the next one on me. He said, do you think that was real emotion you had up there? That was indicating. I didn't know what that meant, but I knew it was a dirty word from the way he said it, you know. And here was this Svengali talking to me that way, and I couldn't understand it at all. But later on, I thought, since he and Clurman invited me that night, to come and join them at these meetings they were having in Steinway Hall every Friday night, that he must have seen something in me. It was just his polite way of expressing it.
I was a student at the Laboratory Theater, and Harold Clurman invited me to come to a meeting, and I came, and I was hooked. He said, please follow me, and I had the tendency to follow a man, and so I followed Harold Clurman into the group theater.
I think it was the winter that I was in the Barretts of Wimpole Street, and French Otone and I'd been in a play together, Age of Innocence, and I think he told them about me, and they invited me to one of these Friday evening things, and their Harold would start to talk, and he never stopped.
And as one lady who came to those meetings in which I set down the main guidelines for the group, said I talked the group into existence.
What? I remember one night, Eunice Stoddard, who later became one of the original members of the group theater, brought a girlfriend of hers into one of these meetings. And she was introduced to us as Katharine Hepburn, a name which none of us knew at that time. And she had never played a part. Beautiful beyond belief. She stayed for the whole meeting.
And I listened about what a wonderful thing the group theater was going to be. That everyone was going to play little parts, and they were going to do wonderful plays. And as I listened to them, I thought that they're all going to be rather invisible.
And at the end, Clurman said to her, Miss Hepburn, would you be interested in joining a group like this that we've been talking about?
And I said, I'm going. And they said, you're what? And I said, I'm leaving. I don't want to be a member of a group. I want to be a great big star. And I left.
Well, we were horrified, as you can imagine, because the whole point of this meeting was that we were not going to have these stars. It was going to be an ensemble theater and all of that. We thought she was some kind of heretic.
The group was not exactly a revolution against stardom, but what we recognized, and from personal experience, what I recognized was that I had no basic technique. And what we discovered, led on by the passions of a man like Harold Clurman, was that there was an awful lot to learn.
And he inspired us with the idea of knowing each other, working with each other, working on a common method.
That even our attitude toward each other, that we had to look for not the faults in each other, but the good things in each other if we were ever going to have an ensemble.
We finally collected a group of about 25 or 26 actors who felt that this was the kind of theater they wanted.
We just were so happy to be invited. And Ruth came running in and said, we've been invited to be in the group. And then Morris came in, and the three of us hugged each other and said, rah, we're all...
On June 8, 1931, they set out for the country. All from different backgrounds with wildly differing tastes, bound together only by a common dream, they headed up to Brookfield Center, Connecticut, to work on their first play, The House of Conway. 28 actors and 3 directors had become a group, the group.